Hello.
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 Hey. Well, Katja, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
The BBC, the ABC, and any other corporations on broadcasting. The voice, everything was so well done.
Thank you.
Make another cooperation.
Thank you. My colleague Beth Cam really helped me. We were sweating bullets today because we were so worried about scheduling this Facebook premiere, and we were like, why isn't this showing up? And then we eventually figured out, well, it's not showing up because it's not 6 o'clock yet. So
Yeah.
we had never done a premiere before, a live premiere. So we were like, what if this isn't working?
Yeah, from the first moment with the Christmas tree and the voice, I think, well, when I look now at some of the major broadcasting, we don't watch TV at all, only from time to time when we are on vacation, like now. Then we watch, you have to see what's going on. And it's really embarrassing, the quality of announcement and so on, how they work. And I was uplifted because we used to European standards, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're also now lowering. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, no, thank you. Without you, this would not have worked. So thank you so much. I think people are just getting off the video. They're just finishing up and probably taking a quick break to get something to drink or maybe hit the lavatory. So I'm sure they will be joining us soon. So where are you right now? You're on holiday, I know, but
Iceland, with the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and close to our daughter who is in Hanover at the local college, Elizabeth, and we are going to join all of us. And Emmanuel and Franz are still snowed in Baltimore.
Yeah, right there.
They're right behind you.
Yes, it's been snowing here too, and it's supposed to start again actually in about an hour and a half, and I think somebody's about to join me here on the sofa. One of my dogs is about to jump up. Oh. I have company too. I saw that in your video, in your fireside chat. You also had a canine companion there. A tail showed, and being a dog lover, I very much appreciated that. There was a bit of a wagging tail in the background.
We could get Maya.
Maya, come here.
Louis, come on up.
Oh, wow, that's another great.
Yes, I have two. The other one is somewhere else. I don't know where, but
when COVID will be over, then we have to have a family meeting, including dogs.
Including dogs. Well, I've got these two, and they're both wet right now.
Our dogs are also homeschooled.
Oh, okay. He missed out on doggy school, and unfortunately, his behavior sometimes shows that. And I spoil them way too much. They're spoiled rotten.
Hello.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
Hello.
Katja. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Don. I like your picture with the snow.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, although we are in New Hampshire, there's no snow yet.
Nothing yet.
You guys are snowed in Baltimore, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's kind of closer to the coast, I guess. You're up in the White Mountains, or where?
Right, yes, we can see Mount Washington. We didn't go up because the wind would blow us down.
Yeah.
We went in July.
I've skied up there a couple of times.
We went up there in July, but it was so cold and so icy that the wind, when you're standing, you were like on a skating.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. That's great. That's great. Well, that was a most wonderful.
Yeah, we are waiting for the snow to go skiing, and Emmanuel Francis is going to.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're going to get it eventually. You know.
Oh, it's fantastic, you know.
Oh my.
Otherwise, we take horses to go on a horse sleigh ride.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Hey, Hardy.
Hey,
there's Gudrun. No, that's not Gudrun.
It's Hardy.
That's Hardy.
I can
I was
change
looking at
the
the
name.
name
I
and
can
not
change
even looking
the
at Hardy.
name.
Hello,
Hello.
Ah, the
Big
big
party!
greetings. My God, everybody is there. I see.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Waiting for you in the red, nice sweater.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Greetings. Are you in New Hampshire?
Oh, yeah, we are in New Hampshire, close to White Mountains. We can see Mount Washington, the wind blowing up, and we are
Uh-huh.
ready for snow. So you can come and join us for skiing. And for Christmas, we will jointly with everybody at the Elizabeth home.
Lucky you.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, everyone in red.
All
oh,
right, here we go.
all right.
Oh,
Thank
let's
God.
celebrate. That's a wonderful way of getting together.
It is. It is. I agree. I agree.
So when things will be over, you come up to Pennsylvania. We have everything: food, company, and jobs.
Yes.
Well, I want to compliment Elizabeth and Emmanuel and Francis for having done a wonderful job. We just
Yeah.
enjoyed your triple concert, particularly.
Beautiful.
It was, and I loved seeing, is it Francis, is it?
Yeah, Francis.
Yeah. I love seeing you every so often looking over to Emmanuel.
Yeah.
It was so,
Yeah.
it was so sweet. It really was. It
Right.
was touching.
Well, it's chamber music, right? I mean,
Yeah,
orchestra
yeah.
too, but
It was
one has
sweet.
to be-
I like that.
Francis, was your debut for this particular piece 12 years ago at the German Society with this? Yeah, that's what I thought. I recognize this with the youth orchestra from the Germany. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it
Wonderful.
was beautiful.
Well, thank you so
Steve.
much.
Hi.
I want to thank
Hello,
also
everybody.
our executive director, who is sitting there a little bit in the dark.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I have the fireplace.
Oh,
behind
yes.
me.
Oh,
I
Beautiful.
see. All right. Mhm.
it's it's Katya's fireside chat.
That's right.
Now, Katya, tell me, when will you start the official fireside chat?
Well, we have 9 participants. I
So
can start at any time,
We expect another 9 at least. Yeah.
sort of. So I'm not sure when to start. I can.
I would think, why don't you start now? People will come into the discussion and they don't mind hearing, if they haven't gotten the opening from, do you have it from the very beginning?
I do.
Yep, with the opening accord.
Yeah,
Yep.
I do. I do.
Okay, wonderful. Because I missed, unfortunately, the beginning of the earlier
You
presentation.
missed her
I
history
had-
lesson on
I had
Beethoven?
some issues with my laptop, so I'm going back to my desktop. Yeah.
Katya, you did a magnificent job with
Yeah.
Elizabeth. I have to
Thank you.
tell you,
Yes.
yeah, it was very good. The material you produce is beautiful and it's informative, very well done. It's again another great production.
Thank
was,
you.
yeah.
Thank you so much. But
I told Kathy she was much better than BBC and ABC and all
I
the
agree.
other
Yeah.
postmodern stations.
Yeah, you have another career waiting for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
you make a great
Open
team with
your
Elizabeth.
company in Washington.
Yeah.
don't promising anything to her. We want to keep her for a while. But
all right. Well,
also
let me start. Actually, we have people coming in right now. So I'm going to quickly wait until they have joined, and then I will start the
While we're
fireplace
still a
fireplace
small
chat.
group, while we're still a small group, let me just introduce one person here whom most of you know by the name only, and that is Lynn Breen, the author of the book about the German genius, or ingenuity, I should say, to be more precise. This is her here, right there. She runs under which happens to be her
Oh.
husband's name. It's her husband.
Beautiful, beautiful job.
I hope he will join us in a little bit. Will he? Can you
Lynn,
unmute
can you
yourself?
hear us?
Can you unmute yourself? Are you able to unmute yourself? Lynn?
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
unmuted.
now we can hear you. Yeah.
Lynn
Hello,
can
Lynn.
speak.
Okay. All right.
I
Lynn
think I
and
need
your
to turn
husband
up
is
a little
Earl, so that now we have her name as well. Okay.
Yeah, I just changed
She
that.
just changed her. Yeah.
I just changed that.
Okay, that's all right. Okay.
All right, so I'm ready when everybody else is. So let me just switch over.
And I'm cutting out of here because I see my wife Gudrun now is in the other end. So I'll just leave you and make some space for someone else.
Indeed, it is remarkable that in spite of COVID-19, the entire world joined in honoring the genius musician and humanist Ludwig van Beethoven during the 2020 year. We are pleased and honored to join to prepare this special concert under the auspices of the German American Heritage Foundation, sharing some of Beethoven's most inspiring compositions, which have also served as catalysts for promoting human dignity, freedom, and justice, as well as manifested his immense will and determination for overcoming even most severe handicaps to serve humanity through the arts. Prior to sharing a selection of Beethoven's great composition, let us share with you some of our personal experience of Beethoven, the man and the great genius.
I think my first recollections of Beethoven's music stemmed from my childhood when my mother would be performing and practicing his cello sonatas. There is one in particular, the A major sonata, number 3, that was particularly beautiful. So optimistic and full of joy, and that opening by the cello solo was something that really stuck in my ears. And many years later, when I had the opportunity to play it with my sister and with my mother, it had this sense of familiarity because I had grown up with it, and the sense of true joy as I experienced it as a performer.
My earliest recollections of Beethoven's music, like many young people, is from Disney's Fantasia. As I listened to his 6th Symphony, the Pastorale, it was beautifully reflected and portrayed by the animation, and I think an emotional feeling was just one of joy and jubilant celebration, just like the 250th anniversary that we're celebrating this year, coupled with the extreme contrasts and strong emotions of Beethoven's music.
Definitely Fantasia, the film. I watched it hundreds of times, you know, with the hippos and tutus and ponies with wings. I mean, I didn't know if they were centaurs or Pegasus or whatever, but the music was amazing, and I just loved it. And the part with Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony had me dancing around the room every single time.
In response to your question, I may not respond in a very 2x2 way. Usually, people meet composers or writers by listening or reading their works or studying them in a systematic way through schooling. I have not been educated as a musician. However, I grew up in a family where music played a very important role, and there was no distinction between classical and popular music. There was only an emphasis on good music, music which would convey some meaning, some inspiration, and some motivation for good action. Every celebration at home, every birthday or name's day or Christmas or Easter was connected with music, both at home in the church and the society at large. For instance, when celebrating birthday, my mother hired a musician who came to serenade under the window early in the morning to play music, including music which later turned out to be Beethoven's music. And I heard this music also in the bakery where 70 men every morning had to listen to this music. My grandfather played it. Ta-ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta-ta. And one day I asked him, what is it all about? And he said, well, music has to inspire. And this man who composed it, his name was Beethoven, and he gave me the whole story. I was very inspired, and later on learning about the desire to bring to reality justice, equality, and respect, I was amazed by this.
In my nearly 50 years of being a concert artist, and nearly as many as an educator, I had many encounters with Beethoven's music, which made me reflect on the uniqueness of his music. My first encounters came, of course, through listening to recordings and realizing that his music is very different and sometimes can be difficult to understand because it is very abstract. My teachers probably felt the same way, because the first time I was assigned a work by Beethoven was when I was a student in the Chopin Academy of Music in Warsaw. During that time, I was selected to participate in the International Pablo Casals competition. The mandatory piece in the second round was Sonata No. 4 in C major by Beethoven. Basically, in the very sophisticated musical environment in which I grew up and was educated, Beethoven was so highly revered that his music was typically only performed by very mature musicians. Performing Beethoven was truly a pinnacle which not everyone could reach.
Yeah, the first work that I learned by Beethoven was his Spring Sonata. So this is Sonata No. 5 for violin and piano, or if you look at the music, actually piano and violin. And it is a fantastic example of the emotional content and musical content that you will find in Beethoven, the stark contrasts between beautiful singing melodies with more bombastic surprises of dynamics, suddenly forte and then without warning piano, or vice versa. And it was an excellent vehicle to help push my playing to the next level. Beethoven can be quoted as once saying that he doesn't care about the difficulties that a certain violinist was experiencing with one of his works. He only cares about the music which he's trying to compose and communicate. And I think often we will find in Beethoven's works certain difficulties because they weren't necessarily conceived as violinistic works, but rather purely musical works. And in addition to that, certain awkwardness that can happen because of that, I think the sudden, surprising nature of his music can take not only the listener by surprise, but sometimes the performer by surprise as well, until they really become intimately familiar with the music.
As a teen, I studied several of Beethoven's piano sonatas. The first one was Opus 14, number 2 in G major, and I remember my teacher working through each movement with me with great attention to detail, very specific about the articulations and the dynamics in a way that we really worked through with a thoroughness that was unlike much of the other music I had studied before then. When I was 15 years old, I was invited to give a recital at the Beethoven House in Bonn, and I still remember that performance being in this rather humble building that is now, of course, also a museum, but has a small concert hall, and sharing the program, of course, with works of Beethoven, but others as well, and then touring the museum, seeing the manuscripts, learning more about his life, about Beethoven, both the musician and the composer, but also Beethoven, the person.
During my freshman year at Towson University, one of the professors and two guest artists performed with the orchestra as soloists in Beethoven's Triple Concerto, and I was in the orchestra accompanying them. Well, just a year later, when I was 16, I was on the stage as soloist in this same concerto. This work has multiple technical difficulties for the cello and is often nicknamed Beethoven's Cello Concerto. And it was crazy that this was the first solo work that I learned by Beethoven, right? I actually still look back on the recordings from these performances with pride.
These days, I spend a lot of my time working with young musicians. I have a passion for teaching and for sharing the music that has been a very huge part of my life with them. And very often I get a request from one of my students to play Für Elise. It's a piece that is so familiar to people around the world, to people who don't even follow classical music, and the kids all want to play it. Now, of course, because it's such a familiar piece, I want to make sure that they do it justice. And so we work and work and work on it, and eventually get it to a place that I would consider that is a decent performance of it. It's hard for a kid to have the attention to detail that it requires. Usually that's the first piece by Beethoven that they play, and maybe the last one for a little while, since most of the other works that he has wrote outside of a couple bagatelles and sonatinas are really quite advanced and take some time and maturity before they can successfully take them on.
During my studies at the Jacobs School of Music for my undergrad and master's degrees, I was fortunate enough to perform many great orchestral works. Among those, almost every Beethoven symphony. One distinct rehearsal I remember where I was really quite tired because I had stayed up all night to study for a test and finish a paper, and just not having a great day, but then we sat down to play through Beethoven's Third Symphony, the Eroica, and I remember telling myself that everything in the world could be going badly, but when you play Beethoven's symphony, you feel fantastic and nothing else matters.
My favorite work by far is his Triple Concerto, which I performed many times, including in China in celebration of the 2008 Olympics. In this work, the cello is highlighted as the most important of the soloists, and for this reason, it is jokingly referred to as Beethoven's Cello Concerto. It is an uplifting and powerful work.
The music itself is powerful and majestic and triumphant and moving, and then together with other soloists, and of course in our case as siblings, but also with a conductor and with an orchestra, and all working together as one unit to create this beautiful, beautiful harmony together. There's nothing in the world like that.
If you finish your day with the Sixth Symphony, it has a very relaxing feel towards the end, which helps soothe you at the end of your workday, and then start your day with the Seventh Symphony, and you'll find that that really energizes the beginning of your day.
As a composer, it absolutely astounds me what Beethoven was able to accomplish. I can say that for me, it is a tedious and labor-intensive experience to create something, to come up with a germ of an idea, and then to elaborate it and to prepare it and work through it and create something that I feel satisfied with. I think most composers and musicians really struggle with finding that balance between pursuing their creative ideas and feeling like they have done it in a way that is worthy of sharing with others. And Beethoven had these additional challenges. One, of course, with his deafness. I cannot even imagine how much more challenging it would be if I could not hear what I'm doing. I always sit at the piano and I work through my ideas. Sound is what inspires me. So the inability to hear, much less working with an entire symphony or chorus of perspective ideas, is something that I can't fathom. but then you add in his desire for really taking something to its ultimate possibility and expanding the form and the concept in a way that really blows out of the water anything that had come before him in terms of the size and the dimensions and the instrumentation, and it's phenomenal.
Years later, I traveled to other countries of Europe, and coming, for instance, to Vienna. There were streets, there were museums, there was a lot of music played in different concert halls, music by Beethoven. I attended some of the concerts. I also saw his great monument at the Central Friedhof, and a very simple inscription, Ludwig van Beethoven. Returning home, I went to a town called Oberglogau, where Beethoven spent few weeks during his visit at that time Germany and now Poland. And while visiting the castle where he lived, a night guard is said, "This man really taught us how to respect other people." When taking this into consideration, I was reading some of the books about Beethoven, and I saw that virtually everybody expressed different perspectives and often repeated uncritically things that he was a very moody, that he was not respectful of others, that he was practically turning the social, religious order upside down. Well, on the occasion of the 250th birthday, it helps to remember the old maxim that creative geniuses are usually difficult to categorize neatly, as their originality prevents them from conforming with commonly held definitions and beliefs. Indeed, Beethoven was, for instance, raised in a Catholic family. However, we can read that he was either an atheist or that he was a theist and so on. That had nothing to do with Christianity, especially with church. It's true that he did not attend regularly Sunday events. It is true that he was practically seeing God everywhere. And when we read the most comprehensive and most competent source about Beethoven, it is the compilation of his statements, of his diary, of his letters. And here we can see who really Beethoven was. He had a high respect for the great creator and said, God is everywhere. And when he loved to go into nature, he practically respect nature as a revelation of the creator. And when composing music, he expressed it. There's been a lot of discussion about, for instance, Missa Solemnis. Many musicologists try to convey the message that this is not a religious music, that this is practically only written to please the Archduke, the Archbishop and Cardinal of Olomouc. Beethoven himself said that he spent over 1 year studying church music, and he was impressed not only by the text of the Mass, but also by the music which was conveyed from Palestrina and others. And he now incorporated some of the elements, but most of all he wanted to express himself in an homage to the Almighty omnipresence and to the loving God. Some musicologists say, well, it was not intended to be performed at church. Beethoven indeed presented it for a celebration, a special celebration at church. However, he also said that this music can be performed everywhere, because God is everywhere. And he even had organized concert where he said these great hymns for like the Kyrie and Gloria separately. And most important, when asking why did he write it, he said, well, not only to inspire musicians, the singers, but to implant religious feelings into the listeners, and permanent religious feelings. So what can be better in a service and in using music to inspire people? He did it also in political matter and other, and here is the greatness, that not by words, but by deeds. Now Beethoven, doing all his wonderful work, also had a lot of obstacles. We know the history of his family, the trouble with his nephew, the trouble with his sister-in-law, with some of the sponsors, but he never gave up. Sometimes he confronted, he went to court, he lost or he won. He always went forward and he said, finally, I have to take the judgment and the decision of the Almighty, because what with time is passing, eternity remains. In speaking about eternity, here comes the day of his death. Friends are gathered around, and Beethoven in the court bring in the priest for the last rites. And again, according to the eyewitnesses, he expressed great gratitude. And we said at the end, friends, enjoy, the comedy ended. It doesn't relate the comedy of the rites. He considered life as a great scenes, which is a temporary event, because he said eternity matters. The comedy finished, but he was looking forward, and in his letters expressed it, to the eternity, where he will meet face to face the Almighty, the Creator, the loving Father. And interesting that his most important works were created in the time when he was almost totally deaf. And we look into Missa Solemnis, and we look into the Ninth Symphony. When was it created? 2 years or 3 years before his death. He was really under great suffering, but here it realized that through aspirate Astra, too difficult to the stars. And he said, this is the way I want to serve people. Therefore, in conclusion, Beethoven is understood in various perspectives and there are many opinions. But I wholeheartedly recommend to go and read and reread his diary, his letters, and most important, listen deeply to his music without any prejudice. Because his music leads us to the Creator and leads us to people with justice, brotherhood, and peace.
Happy birthday, Beethoven!
So to all, to Kati, to the musicians, the board members, and everybody who has been inspired by Beethoven in their life and work and in aspirations. To your health.
Cheers. Very good.
Made me, I guess I'm a strange adult, but I was an equally strange child. And honestly, the first music I remember hearing and ever appealing to me as something that I wanted to listen to more was Beethoven. And, you know, I think it started with the symphonies, but then it moved into the chamber music and concertos. And, you know, just to read about him as a human being and to see the complexity and, you know, the nobility that was part of him. And yet also, I guess a lot of people who bore the bad end of him would think brutality in certain ways, but yet, you know, just a nobility that was, I guess, spoke to me as certainly as a teenager and as an adult. And, you know, I remember things like going to a school concert they brought us to, and they had the New Jersey Symphony there, and they played the overture to Egmont. And just, you know, hearing those strings sounding live, just, you know, something I want to recapture again. And I don't, you know, it's sort of one of those things that, you know, you look back on and you wish, oh, I'd love to hear that again for the first time and be able to capture that experience, you know?
I think, Katya, you said, or someone said about the fact that Beethoven actually also wrote an opera. One, right? There's only one.
Fidelio.
Fidelio, that's right. That's right. Okay. All right. It's been a long time since I've heard that one. So I don't remember how it goes anymore. I'm
There's
gonna
one
have
ballet as well.
I'm
One
gonna have to
ballet.
use YouTube, iTunes, and try to see if I can recognize it again.
Okay, Elizabeth mentioned that a 15-year-old young lady, she went to Bonn and was in awe of being in that small, modest birthplace of his, which is called the Beethoven House.
Uh-huh.
In my formative years, I lived in Bonn, and I walked by there at least 4 times a week on my way to Romance language classes, because I actually had the intention of coming to or going to South America rather than coming to the US. But life has changed, and so 4 years later, I was up in New York. But I just wanted to say that that was my very first connection with Beethoven. And then actually, we heard very briefly the Ode to Joy. And I wanted to ask you if anyone knows where Schiller might have composed that Ode to Joy. I'm sure nobody will know, because it's not written anywhere but in old documents of the Auenmüller family. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, lived on an estate south of Leipzig called Kahnsdorf. And when Schiller was a couple of years before his death in 1802, 1803, he met there another famous German poet, Körner. And while he was basically already halfway gone, he suffered under pneumonia and died of it, actually. He had this inspiration to compose Ode to Joy, or actually the text for it. And it was subsequently then, as we heard, just 2 years before Beethoven's death, that he composed the music and included in the 9th Symphony at the very end of the chorus. So these are the 2 connections at the very beginning, at my early years, and then only recently did I read this in the family papers. So I feel somehow connected to him in a dual fashion.
How interesting. So maybe I can say of some other family connections which Charles has, Karl-Heinz.
Yeah.
Beethoven used to drink coffee in his grandfather's cafe, exactly in Oberglogau. This is a very strong family tradition and definitely a fact, right? The cafe used to be just across from the
Castle.
And I researched this a little bit. Beethoven loved coffee, and he had to have a particular number of beans grinded for his coffee. He was very meticulous. You can read about it actually on internet. But this is really a fact that they used to go there.
Yeah, when he came, he loved the coffee. He always asked how many beans were there, but he never paid.
Yeah.
And this was in the families. Whenever something happened, we want to free. Are you like Beethoven?
That's a good one.
That's
I have something that I did research, because one thing I have in common with Beethoven is he's actually a Hollander. in today's terms, if you look at his last name, it's van Beethoven. And I found out that Bonn and Cologne and that whole part of Germany was part of the Netherlands. It was Holland until Napoleon drew the boundaries. And so they all, when they drew the boundary and said, now you're Germany, then they started speaking German, but they're actually Dutch. And van Beethoven was a Dutchman, just like my grandmother.
Yeah. By the way, van, of course, is in the Dutch language. It's equivalent from von, but from Beethoven, it was also a town in the Flanders. It's now Belgium.
It's Belgium, yeah.
Well, but so he would have been Flemish. But
Flemish, yes.
It's interesting how Beethoven never considered himself, even at that time, nationalism was not so strong. But he went over the boundaries. He anticipated the future in a way of general universal brotherhood, justice, and peace. And all his music really conveys this in a fantastic way. By the way, I was relating to Hardy's question, but I was studying in many ways the different relationship between Beethoven, Goethe, Schiller, and so on. And for instance, there are many stories, and nobody mentioned that ever Schiller heard his composition. However, there's a mentioning that Goethe got offended when he walked in Weimar in the park and Beethoven didn't take off his hat when the princes went by. So it means Beethoven was really more than a Democrat for his time. Yeah. And he also wrote his letters to the Archduke. I said, well, there are many nobles, but only one Beethoven. So he had this really strong personal dignity and what we say personalism, which became later very popular in the 20th century philosophy.
He was a rebel. Very
as a matter, his teacher called him atheist because Haydn, he was very traditional at that time. And of course, the whole religiosity was based on the institutions. And Beethoven, he was inspired by the Illuminati. And Illuminati came from Ingolstadt, part of Bavaria. And there was a teacher of history and philosophy who came from a converted Jewish family to Catholicism. But this teacher also said, well, the people who will study, who will practice what the gospel said, they can change the world and they will be illuminated. And here we have the whole philosophical trend later on. And no doubt that Beethoven was very much influenced because his teacher in Bonn, who gave the job to Beethoven at the age 12 to be an organist at the local church of the church, was a Illuminati. And Illuminati were like now people who are not politically correct at that time, and they were persecuted, they were all, but they had the ideas which led up to great changes in the mentality, in the behavior, and practically brought a cultural and social revolution to Europe.
Karl-Heinz, what is the current Polish name of the little town that you...
It's Głogówek, Głogówek, G-O-L-G-O-W-E-K, Oberglogau. As a matter of fact, during the war, there was the famous Panzerschlacht between the Russians and the Germans nearby, and most of the town was destroyed. Yeah. The inhabitants were practically chased out, not only by the war, but later when the Poles and the Soviets came, because although they often considered themselves as Silesian, and Silesian were neither Germans nor Poles. They were Silesians. They spoke the dialect. It's something similar like Texas. They are neither Americans nor Mexicans. so you can understand the identity. And so I went in 1948 with my mother to see the house of her grandmother, where Beethoven was drinking the coffee. And the new quote unquote owner, somebody who came from the eastern part of Poland, chased by the Soviets, and they later occupied the territory, he said, well, these Germans are out and you cannot come in here anymore. Means the point is, Beethoven's spirit didn't touch them, but nowadays in the same town, there are streets in both languages, in German and in Polish. There's every year a festival, except this year. And we were invited to be there this year, but we could not join them. So we joined the German American Heritage Foundation concert.
Hey, this reminds me something you may know, Charles. I've always been very interested in Sorbin, and Hardy may know Sorbin too. There's a Slavic group in Germany.
Saxony.
And I found out I had a great-great-grandmother who was Sorbin, and they're the only Slavic ethnic group in the world that's Lutheran. Most Slavs are either Orthodox Catholic or Roman Catholic, but these Sorbin were all the way up to the Elbe River, and they're still, I think, in Saxony. And I know there's a town, this is something for the GAHF, but there's a town in Texas called Sorbin, where these Sorbin Germans came and settled the town. So I've always been fascinated with it, and I can't find it much on it.
I can tell you a lot about Sorbin, but I don't want to do it. We'll do it in a private conversation some other time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
When it comes to food, it's very interesting. Years ago, the University of Pennsylvania conducted a study on food patterns and behavior. And they concluded that often people stick to one food close to their identity. When it comes here to Silesia, it was, as I mentioned, Polish, German, and somebody said it was meant in the past Turkish, anyway. But in the food, often the Germans would not eat what the Poles, means on the other side, ate. So similar thing. It now is overcame, and I think it's virtually like a global cuisine when we often talk about it. But there's still the names. They call it polskie kluski. Klösel, Polish klösel. You know what klösel means? It's out of potatoes and starch and so on, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then also a typical, let's say, meal called a jour. And this is for the miners. It is made of rye flour and of speck. Speck means bacon.
Bacon, right?
Yeah, and very fat. And they always say people who eat this kind of food are strong and intelligent. And those who not, they eat kuchen, means cakes.
I'm just going to jump in really quickly because I have to excuse myself in a couple of minutes. I always hear about all of your names. I see some of the emails that my dad will forward and they give me an update on what's happening at GUM. And it's great to finally get to meet you, to actually see the faces associated with the names. And I want to thank Katya and Hardy and the whole board for facilitating this celebration. I know that there was a lot of work involved in so many different ways, and the technology is something we would never have anticipated being such a huge part of this, for better and for worse. But we're grateful for the opportunity to share the music and to connect and to make this a meaningful experience together. So thank you, everyone, and Prost.
Back to the food. May I only mention that now for the forthcoming Christmas, virtually every family in the United States has a different menu. In the area where I grew up, there was only the Polish or the German, the Catholic or the Protestant. For instance, the Catholic had fish. It was to be carp.
Carp with
and
potato salad.
Right. Where the Protestant, like we have here, there are ham and other things. Yes, means things like opposites. And I wonder, what are you preparing for Christmas? Because we are following a very interesting, for years, combination of both cuisines. Only on the second Christmas day, which doesn't exist in our calendar here, but in Europe it does. So we have the American menu. But on the first, we have one, the German, and then the Polish menu. And for Christmas Eve, a very traditional, I would call, based even on a Jewish tradition. Okay, but for instance, they had to in the past clean the utensils, so far even with fire, not water, but over, like in Jewish tradition, to put it over fire, kosher.
Kosher, right.
My family's tradition, we make our own stollen still, my brother does.
Wow.
I make gehaktus, for those of you who don't know what that is.
Yes.
And then Slivovitz. Because all of the Donauschwaben and the Siebenbergen Saxon that I grew up with, that's their number one drink is Slivovitz.
We do a Slivovitz from Yugoslavia.
Yeah. And for those that don't know what gehaktus is, it's raw meat that we mix. Raw meat, raw eggs, capers, onions, salt, pepper mixed together and spread on rye bread.
And the fresh eggs on top.
Fresh eggs. I mix them in. I mix it all together. It looks like you're spreading peanut butter.
In Bayern ist das Hack oder auch Met manchmal. So we know that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is for us, and that was from my mother, who was she was from Hanover, and that's, we didn't eat goose or anything like that. It was always turkey.
I made goose once and I set the kitchen on fire, so I won't do that anymore.
Too much fat, yeah.
Too much fat. It really set the oven on fire. So Christmas Eve, it's fondue for us. Everybody just cooks their own meat in the fondue pot. And I make homemade bread for that. And we dip it in and just eat that and have Glühwein. And then on the first Christmas day, it's beef rouladen and red cabbage and dumplings.
The goose, yes.
One of my favorites.
Beef rouladen.
We have geese on the second. As a matter of fact, this year we will have our own goose from our own farm.
Wow. Who's going to butcher it?
Well,
it's already done. It's already
done. It's done. It's a secret.
Yeah. That's good.
And as a matter of fact, traditionally people are using the goose blood and made special sausage.
Okay, stop
Wow.
this. But next time, Kathy, next time you have goose, you cut the fat separately and you sort of try it, melt it beautifully in a pot, and it makes a great lard, kind of like lard.
Fried lard, yeah.
With onions. So
With
don't waste it baking it together with a goose. You cut it out separately.
I was 23 when I did that. I didn't quite know what I was doing.
Yes, many medical benefits.
It is one of the most delicious things if you sort of make a lot out of it. And very healthy too, yes.
It has a lot of pepper.
I just, after that disaster, I vowed to never make goose again. It always looked so easy when my grandmother did it, but I failed miserably.
We would render the lard and add onions and apples to it, and then have a spread, a sandwich spread from it.
Wow.
Gänseschmalz.
Yeah, Schmalz, Gänseschmalz. Yeah.
I wonder what Yogi is having for Christmas.
Who, Yogi?
Yogi Redman.
Oh, he made it.
Oh.
You're muted, Yogi.
You're muted.
Okay, there he is. He called.
Sorry, pardon. We have no plans so far, but what is a little sensation in our history, Thanksgiving, we had turducken. Who knows what turducken is?
No idea.
No.
It's a Cajun
Yes,
specialty, right?
it is Cajun. It is a little chicken in a larger duck, and all two are placed inside a turkey. So that is big, easy Thanksgiving dinner.
Triple concerto, triple meal.
Wow.
A small chicken, a mini, and then a bigger duck, maybe, and a giant goose. Oh,
Are you now in San Francisco, or what is this image behind you?
Yeah, this is a wonderful Golden Gate.
And
yeah, well, when I got your email, I thought you are in Iowa because, but that's
one of these days.
Exchanging identity, huh?
No, it's just the advantages of Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. A little cinematography there.
yeah. Well, John is probably sitting right next to this gate, Golden Gate there. Is he still with us, John?
Yes.
No, he left a little while ago, I think.
He left, yes.
As a matter of fact, when we were last time in California, we also went to the area of the High Ashbury because it's part of my former studies, and also the Golden Gate. And guess what I brought from the Golden Gate? Plants of wild strawberries, and they're growing in our garden. Wherever we go, we violate a little bit the importing agricultural items, but we bring and plant it. Like we are from Hawaii flowers, and we're from different countries, from Germany, nice lilies, and from Lithuania, some northern lights, they call it. It's something like flowers which shine at the moonshine.
You're producing your own moonshine?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm referring to the moonshine booze. You didn't catch that.
I didn't get it.
I said, are you producing your own moonshine?
Ah, yeah, moonshine. No, we don't do this. We do our own wine. So when everyone will come and visit, we have two kinds of wine. One is called Harmony, and Harmony is the white wines. Every year the same name. And the red is Symphony. And some French people visited with us, said, well, you should send it to a competition, exhibition. And my wife said, no, because some of them taste like vinegar.
Oh, that's a musical family for you, right?
Not the Symphony. No, I've tried the red wine. Your red wine is very good.
Symphony.
Yeah, I liked it.
That reminds me, when I lived in Germany, there was a thing called Federweißer. And it was only in the fall, and it was, who knows what Federweißer is?
I do.
Yes.
So tell me about, because it was very sweet, and it was in it still fermenting. So it had to have a hole in the top, otherwise it would have exploded.
Yes.
And we used to buy it on the side of the road, and it was only like in September and October. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And you can't get that in America.
It's not necessarily sweet. It depends on the type of grape that's being used, because in Franconia they use Frankenwein, and they turn that into, they sell that on the streets as Federweißer as well, and it just has a loose cap on top, and you have to be very careful transporting it, because it is very, very bubbly, and you drink it like juice, but it's quite potent. And my husband can tell a story about that, how he drank about a bottle and a half, just gulped it down, not thinking that, it went down like lemonade.
Right.
When he tried to get up, the room was spinning.
Oh, yeah. That's it. Why do we not have that in America? I'd give anything to have that again. I don't know why. Nobody has that in America.
Yeah, I think you don't have a clientele unless you are willing to invest a couple of $100,000 in it. and set aside a vineyard. But you're right now growing much more profitable on growing pot, I understand. Marijuana has become a big item in your state, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm not too happy about that, but it is.
Neither am I. I think it's ridiculous, but
Pretty.
and they are legalizing it everywhere, also for recreational purposes. That's not bad.
In which state?
Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
Colorado.
Colorado is very far to the left now. Denver and actually most of the state is conservative, but Denver and Boulder have had so many people move in that the numbers. This is like Colorado. It's a very deep blue state because of two cities. But when you get out of those two cities, Colorado is like twice the size of Germany, I think. It's huge. And everyone's very conservative except for those two cities. And because of those two cities, it's a very blue state.
And more Easterners are attracted, and even Californians are attracted to Colorado because the real estate prices are still moderately priced. And so.
Starting to change, but that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, I have it. Sorry. Give it to me.
Well, who else is participating? I can't see them all. Somebody who hasn't spoken up, maybe.
Lynn, isn't Lynn there?
Lynn, are you still with us?
Yep, she's there.
Well, why doesn't she say something?
Lynn, tell us about the state of Michigan.
She's muted. She's muted.
Oh, yeah. First, I want to talk
They are not full of protest.
Yeah, no, she can't.
She probably doesn't know how to unmute herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the mother going?
I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. It was too small. Okay, no, I'm in New Jersey here. It's snowing outside.
Hello, Ute.
Hello, Ute.
Hi.
Yeah, it's
So what are
snowing heavily.
What are you having for Christmas dinner or Christmas Eve dinner?
Of us, usually on Christmas Eve, we all got together like a good family, German family. Everybody in the family came to our house and bring friends and relatives if they didn't have a place to go. Well, this year, our son and daughter-in-law took it over last year. And this year, we're just going to be by ourselves. And nothing special. We'll survive it.
And what do you sing on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day at home?
Usually, whatever the church.
Church, not at home?
At home, not that much. No, we hear a lot of music. We enjoyed the music today that you made. We really loved it. My husband now has another Zoom meeting, so we somehow plan our Zoom meetings always at the same time. This is, I think, time in the last few weeks.
That's a shout, yeah.
So, no, we're doing fine. We're doing well, and we hope it stays that way. We both wish we could travel sometime.
Yeah, I bet.
Very much. Otherwise, we're pretty good, and we're glad we don't have to shovel snow tomorrow.
That's the advantage of being.
That's waiting for me tomorrow is all that snow.
Right.
And you're being served a meal too. You don't even have to cook tomorrow, right?
We have what we want to eat, and they supply it to us.
You mentioned you like to travel. Indeed, everybody likes to travel. And
Right.
I consider traveling as the best university.
Yes.
I agree.
What our kids experience when they went when we 2 or 3 years to school, to general school, and the teacher said, "Who allowed you to go on a tour?" and so on. Finally, we got tired of this. I said, "Forget it." We got homeschooling, and we didn't waste too much time. We gave them instead the fish. We gave them the fishing pole. It means the method of learning.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to spend time. We got a soccer league. We got our music. And whenever kids were going with the summer camp was combination of music, Bible, and soccer. Because, and this is how we invented also our summer institute. It's called International Music Institute. And the kids came to the age of going to summer camps. But I checked all the prices, I checked the programs, and finally found out often on the roster you have the best musicians, but in reality, they're only like for the marketing.
In many cases, yes.
Yeah. And so we decided to open our own now for 20 years already. And it is fantastic, limited to 20 people. And the kids started to teach when they were teenagers. And what I learned, that kids learn more from kids than from adults.
That's one way. And someone said that traveling is a better education than they get in the school.
Oh yeah, we met people of different brand, of different colors, of different, German different kinds. For instance, in Cuba, we met people who came from Germany to help to build the system years ago, okay? And now they try to build the system down. So according to the saying, wir bauen auf, reißen nieder und haben Arbeit immer wieder.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
I don't have to translate it. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is, well, when COVID will be over, instead of we traveling, traveling everybody to Washington or to Pennsylvania, we can travel around and have the meetings, having concerts in California, in Colorado, in Minnesota, and spread the good news, because music instead is the best bridge for all people. And we experienced this between East and West Germany. First, when they were divided, there was no way to mention in the West the Easties, and no way to mention the West in the East. And it remains even after the unification. And we were invited to Eisenach. Eisenach, where Luther translated the Bible, and it was hiding. So while being there, we met some people, and they said nearby is the Brandenburg, ruins of the Brandenburg Castle. And I said, what are you doing there? Nothing. And there was a river Vera called, the former border. The people on one side didn't speak to the other even 2 years after unification, because these were Westies and these were Easties. So what we got an idea, organized a concert in the Brandenburg, Begegnung und Konzerte. And until now, every year they meet and play, and they have a Feldmesse, or they have a meeting, and they are like brothers. They write to us Christmas cards like this, what I write to my sister or my brother. So I think music indeed is the best bridge for all.
It is.
Yeah, you're right.
So that's when we like to sing. Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht.
Very good, Charles.
You know, Charles, from the sublime to the ridiculous and back to the sublime. Talking about the food for the holidays and the fish, I had a friend who was a Slovak, and to him, he knew it was Christmas as a child when there'd be a carp swimming in the bathtub.
Exactly, carp. Exactly.
Yes, that's exactly what we had at home. Carp swimming in a bathtub.
And I was talking to the children in school, and a girl who's recently from Poland, and she was saying, you know, my father told me the same story. When he was a boy, that would happen. And
carp, live carp, and then you put it in a bathtub until the moment came.
But see, there's also a tradition, the carp, the so-called Jewish carp, that's called the Greek way, the sweet carp. So it was interesting how the different traditions mixed.
Yeah.
For instance, Advent was not purely a Catholic or a Christian event. It was mixed with the Jewish tradition, especially from the Exodus from Egypt. And people were reminding about the slavery, about the liberation. And the idea was later very helpful when communists took over. They said, Hoffnung bleibt bei uns und wir werden immer leben. Means the hope remains with us, and we always will live. There were difficult times. For instance, he could not speak German in Silesia. My father lost his job as a chemical engineer. He had to work on the railroad. He was also accused because he was a German officer, so that he's a German. He means they want to put him to concentration camp. There were different difficulties, but what united later people? Music. When the Soviets came and they saw at our home accordion, they could not play some of them. Almost all of them. My younger sisters played it for them. They all became different people in the moment. Different people. They came into Rabras. They went out like quasi friends.
Yeah.
But they took with them the accordion.
They couldn't play it, right? That's good.
And back to the Sublime. I don't know if I imagine it's online, but starting usually around Christmas Eve or the day before, Columbia University's radio station begins a Bach Fest that lasts until New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve it stops. And they will do everything from a daily cantata or two to a comparative listening segments of music. And some of the people who are on it are fairly learned. Some are just playing records for their time as students. But it's for anybody who likes Bach, it's fantastic. And I have some friends who will pop in and listen maybe an hour a day, and some have their radio on 24/7 almost to listen to what they're doing there. So certainly if anybody is interested in it, it's worth checking out if they have it online. I imagine by today you should be able to listen to them online, and I pick it up over the air here.
Where are you, station two? Is that
Sorry,
Where are you? What city are you in?
I'm in Bayonne, across from Manhattan, basically.
Bayonne, New Jersey.
Yep.
Yes.
Bayonne, New Jersey. Yeah.
Yes, and it's snowing heavily here too. So.
Yes, it's been snowing here too. But since we're talking about different Christmas traditions, I just wonder if you can recognize this star in the back of us.
The star.
That's it.
Very
also the manger on the right side.
Is that Moravian?
Yes, that's a Moravian star.
That is a Moravian star. Yes, and it hails from Saxony, where I am from. And it's actually somewhere between the birthplace of Charles or Karl-Heinz and my own, sort of halfway distance. But we happen to live now in a place called the Moravian, because at the very location here, the person who introduced the Moravian faith in this country was Count von Zinzendorf. He came here in 1742 and established, after being here a year or so and having some dialogue with the then Christian Lutheran pastor Muhlenberg, he then decided, as the older and wiser person, to move north to Bethlehem. And that's why you have now Bethlehem and the university there with its Moravian origin. So I just wanted you to see that.
I thought Moravians were from Slovakia, what's now Slovakia.
No, Count von Zinzendorf happened to own vast areas on Czech ground, or
I see.
Bohemian ground, I should say.
Okay.
It's the part right adjacent to Saxony.
Yeah.
But he was born in Dresden.
Okay.
And he came over here in 1742. So
one of his missionaries was a guy named Johann Heckenwalder, who founded all they Christianized the Indians in Western Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And there's a book, I have it somewhere in my house, I have to find it. The book of Heckenwalder's journal he was the first European to go into most of those areas. They were always vast wilderness. And he went, he founded a village called Ganadohutten in Ohio, that the Indians were all Christianized and peaceful and farming, and a bunch of crazy Pennsylvanians went in and killed them all. And the horrible fate, but it's all part of the history of that part of the country.
Well, the good part about it is the German settlers here established very friendly relationships with the Native Americans, as we call them now, Indians in former times. But since the Cleveland Indians have just changed or about to change their name, so we hope they won't call it now the Cleveland Native Americans.
As a matter of fact, in our neighborhood in Pennsylvania lives a family by name Weise.
Yeah.
And they have been related to Conrad Weise.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, I think, one of the most interesting phenomenon in Indian American or Indian settlers, Indian and settlers history. They were not conquering them like, let's say, the British and other, but Weise spent a year with the Indian, learned the language, learned the costume, learned the culture, and brought to the peace, which the pen was proud of. But it was established by Conrad Weise.
Yeah.
And up in Pennsylvania is his estate, a nice museum, and maybe sometimes we can have there also a meeting of the German Heritage Foundation.
Homestead.
It's the Ephrata Cloister in Ephrata, where Conrad Weise
nearby
built his little community, and he was the official translator for William Penn, and that's why William Penn kept peace with the Native Americans here in the area.
For 70 years.
Yeah, well, for much longer. But William Penn didn't stay here so long. He returned.
No, he did not introduce the Indian Wars like later on.
But also in Texas, the German settlers were Hessians from that time. They settled around Brownsville. They also were on very friendly terms with the Native Americans. So it was unfortunately the British settlers who decided to conquer this with their muskets and their modern firearms of that time. And that's how, unfortunately, a lot of the territory was yielded to them in a disgraceful manner.
Yeah, I think usually we ignore the role of an individual, but in my conviction is individual make the difference. Although we say ein Vogel macht kein Frühling, it is true. If the tone is given, especially by a leading person, people follow either wrong or good directions.
Yes.
Very true.
So let's continue with our German society in a good direction. And now on the new leadership, continue the tradition and innovation. And both of them will bring success.
Now, Karl-Heinz,
thank you. Yes.
Let me ask if there's anybody around here that hasn't spoken or would like to say something. I mean, I understand that everyone wants to talk as much as either one of us, but is there anybody who has not been able to have an opportunity to say at least a few words to the colleagues here that's sitting around this table with a glass of wine in their hand?
I'd like to speak to Lynn if she's available.
Lynn, can you hear us?
She can, yeah.
Maybe on mute too.
We can't hear you, Lynn.
Yeah.
You need to unmute. Unmute.
Can you, with your kind, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, what I would like to say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't heard before. I would like to thank Katya and Hardy from the depth of my heart for their work on the German ingenuity book. I handed them a sheaf of papers like this, And then so many months later, we ended up with this.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I just owe so much to Katya and Hardy, and that's really what I want to say. I could go on, but I won't. But I think both of them deserve so much credit for the book, and I'm just very grateful.
Well, Lynn, when did you conceive the idea of the book?
I'm sorry, how did I conceive of it?
When?
5 years ago? How and when?
Okay, it was quite a while ago. It was about 6 years ago when I was helping a gentleman in the next town over from mine. He had been born in Germany, and he had been a prisoner of war in this country and during World War II. And he was really famous in his town of Grand Ledge, Michigan. And I had heard of him, and I happened to run into him at a concert in his town, and I went up to him. I didn't know him, and I asked him if there had been a book written about him, because he had just done incredible things in his life, and he said no. And I asked for his phone number, and I called him a week or so later and said, I'd like to meet you for lunch and to talk about your life. And so he said, fine. And I showed up, and he had a suit on, he had a tie on in this place that didn't require a tie. And I said, really what I wanted to see you about is I want to write your book. And so from then on, we just met every couple of weeks in this little restaurant, and he told me his life story, and I was busy taking notes, and it ended up to be his life story. And it was published. Well, we self-published because we had a hard time finding a publisher. And it was published 1 year before he passed away. And that year was just like magic for him, because he was so happy. He just got all kinds of accolades, and people in the town of Grand Ledge where he lived already loved him, but he was just, it was just a great year for him. And he gave me the idea to write the German ingenuity book, because what he would do, he felt very badly that Germans were sort of getting a bad rap because of World War I and World War II. And he would speak before school groups and civic groups, Kiwanis, Rotary, and so on, about the goodness of the American people, of the German people, excuse me. And when he passed away, I said, I've got to continue this.
Wow.
And so I did. And I'm not a speaker as he was, but I thought, well, maybe I can write it. And so it took me, I would say, at least 4 years to do all the research. Sure. But it was, as they say, a labor of love. And I'm just so grateful to Hardy for taking on the project, and also to Katya for being such a team player. That I owe them both so much. And
we owe you a lot, I can tell you. If I may be so bold, she's already now working on yet another book. Would you like to tell us? Because I wouldn't want to spill the business ahead of time.
I would love to. I don't know how long it's going to take me to
give us a brief introduction.
Have it published, but what the title is, and I just changed the title because I found so much German information that what it's about. The first railroad bridge that connected United States and Canada was designed and built by a German immigrant named John Roebling. And there have been a ton of books written about the Underground Railroad, but none focus on that bridge and that German immigrant. And I thought, this is the niche that I need. I've always been fascinated by the Underground Railroad. And so the more research I did into it, I found that Germans have historically been anti-slavery. And so I think I don't have the name of the written down, but if I could remember the title of the book, I think it's Freedom at Niagara, then a colon, and German Americans, Canadians, and the Underground Railroad. That's the tentative title of it. And I've started work on it, and I'm just in love with the job of doing the research, and I'm really looking forward to starting the writing.
There was just a movie I watched, what, a week ago called Emperor. Have you seen that?
No.
It's about a slave. Who was told by his I don't know, I think it was his grandmother, that that if they hadn't nabbed him from Africa, he actually had royalty, in his blood, and he would have been king. And they called him they called him emperor. That's the reason they called him that.
Yeah.
And the story is mainly about his how he got so tired of all the mishandling, by his master. He had some really rotten characters in this movie, who were very cruel, and so he decides to go north and get his freedom, and buy the freedom of his son, who he had to leave behind. It was good. It was a very nice, very well done.
I'll have to look that up. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then you might also wish to look up, we have just established a new website called German Roots. German Roots.
Okay.
And the front picture of that website shows John Roebling's Brooklyn Bridge, which of course was the first suspension bridge that he built. And so Roebling, as you know, also built another bridge across the Ohio River.
Yeah,
and so he's been
quite
familiar. But coming back also to you mentioned the independent, or the German attitude towards slavery. In 1688, 5 years after Pennsylvania was established, and the first German settlement was just placed outside of the city limits of Philadelphia, in a small hamlet called Germanopolis, now Germantown. The settlers of that group, under leadership of Mr. Pastorius, actually had put in a petition for the independence of the slaves. But unfortunately, while it wasn't very popular here, so the British dominated Pennsylvania legislature ignored it and wouldn't even bring it up to a vote. So there's a lot of information that we can still feed you with.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I can see you did a lot of research. Well, and the information which you provided in your publication and now is exciting. And here comes my question. Didn't the German immigrants were quite different than from any other country. For instance, the revolution in the 18th century, on the break of the 40s and 30s and 40s, and then the people from Schwaben and from other places, they came here. They had the idea of freedom. They had the idea of being oppressed by others. The same happened earlier with the religious immigration and other. So they had a different background and they had the appreciation, a desire for freedom, while, for instance, the British or even the Dutch, even the French, they had a different background.
Yes.
I preparing a reflection on German immigration, where I want to mention that.
Yeah, and take the goodies out of those places, bring them to England.
Yeah, I think this is also to bring up, well, especially now when we speak about justice and other things. Well, it didn't came from the Yankees. It came from the persecuted Germans in different part of the world, including World War II or after World War II.
Way before. All right. I see we're already way past 9 o'clock. Katja said we should limit it to 90 minutes. I don't know how long our license go. We could probably hang on here. I mean, I still have 3/4 of my bottle of wine to drink.
Could you send it over online, please?
Oh, Karl Hormann, who's in Germany, from what I hear, I don't know where in Germany. He said he'd be calling in at midnight. I don't think anybody's going to be around then.
No, it's way past midnight. It's now for him 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, there you go.
We may conclude with this song, Hoch sollen sie leben.
Yeah,
Hoch sollen sie leben. Hoch sollen sie leben. Dreimal hoch.
Very good.
Okay, Don, to you and the rest of the board, all the best. Merry Christmas.
Yes.
We don't see each
Merry
other.
Christmas.
All right.
I hope.
Yes.
Yes.
Prost, jawohl.
First.
A Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year.
Yes.
A healthier one.
Yeah, and that we'll meet all in person.
That's right.
Please God.
As
Let's
I
hope
mentioned, we have good
we
food,
see each other in
company,
person.
and jobs in Pennsylvania at the Applehaven Farm.
Yeah,
Next Gettysburg, where also the Germans were fighting.
Okay.
All right.
Frohes
All
Neues.
right.
Frohes Jahr.
Gesundheit.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Wiedersehen macht Freude.
Okay.
Thank you, Kati. Thank you, Hardy. Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you.
God bless.
The whole family. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Auf Wiedersehen.
Bleib nicht so lange fern. So schön. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.
Bravo!
All right. Take care.